Greetings. Welcome to Dr. English's Book Lovers Book Club. I'm Dr. English and I teach English. Today I'm going to review Dragon Hoops by Gene Luen Yang. This is one of the books that I taught in my Teaching the Graphic Novel class, and it's really been a big favorite. And I chose this book as I started to think about the curriculum for that class. I chose this book because it was recommended as a great choice for middle school students. But I have something to say about that at the end of this when I do my segment on should you teach this in a high school or middle school classroom. But first of all, I want to say I have not read American Born Chinese, and I really feel like I need to do that. It's like everybody seems really familiar with it, and I am not. So my first introduction to Gene Luen Yang was Dragon Hoops. And I have to tell you, before I continue anymore, is that I grew up in a basketball family. I absolutely love basketball in every way, shape, and form. I played basketball when I was in high school. I didn't continue. I played as a freshman and a sophomore, and I played in junior high. And all of my family played basketball pretty much. And I have 11 siblings, I've long been a lover of basketball, so I really am endeared to this book and how he tells the story. So a couple of things that I really appreciate about Gene Luen Yang is that he is a history person. And I love that because he has so much of history in this book. He has the beginning of Naismith and invention of basketball, and then Senda Berenson. He has a passage about her who started women's basketball, and but he also has other parts about cultural, and he does this background. To me, this is a graphic novel that is really an immigrant story, because he is like all of us. I mean, my great-grandparents immigrated from Poland, southern Poland, on my mother's side. On my father's side, my grandmother was the first generation who came from Graz, Austria. And he really makes us think about that, about how everybody here, unless you're indigenous, we're all immigrants. And I love that he talks about the students in here and the players. He was teaching high school at Bishop O'Dowd High School. And so this is the story of Bishop O'Dowd's run, and I think it's 2015, and their run for the state championship of California. And being from a basketball family, my two oldest brothers played in a state championship. Not in a state champion, at a state tournament. It was a big deal, from a small town in Nebraska of 480 people, that we made it to the state tournament in the Class D out of Class A, B, C, and D, to make it to the state tournament. That was just huge, and it's like we still remember it because it was such a big deal. So in that regard, I understand Gene so well, and I just love this so much. But I really do think that I think this is, Dr. English's, critique and opinion about the book is that I think it's an immigrant story because he does such a good job of looking at the cultural backgrounds of these players of this year. And I just love this so much. And just the way he uses the art, he uses these sepia tones when he goes back into history. And I really appreciate that, if you know anything about history and about sepia tones of older photos. And even in the movies and film, they do it too. They use sepia to indicate, going back to the past. So, and I'm just talking about him capturing the story. He's so good at capturing the story, and he really emphasizes the coach, Lou, and he emphasizes each of the players. And I really appreciate how he looked at the cultural background of each of the players, and I love that so much. And it's also like he has this, I would call a motif or a device of whenever someone is making a decision, he shows them with their feet. And he always talks about taking steps, and he was processing himself at that time whether to continue teaching or to go on and do comics full time. And I love that he has that all the way throughout for himself, for the coaches, for the players. this step, there's these scenes, and my students picked up on that too. And it's, maybe a little obvious, but it's really well done. So I want to read a couple passages and show you some of the photos that I really appreciated. And some of my favorites are at the, going back to Coach Lou and his, being in a state tournament with the Dragons. And he's telling the story, and he says, he 1, 2, 3 Dragons. I left the huddle early. He's talking about himself. And he's, in the future, right now, he's saying, how kids can be a bit delusional. And he says, and it goes back to him being in this state championship game. He goes, "Hey, Mr. Announcers, you tell everybody down in Southern California that Lou Ritchie's about to bring this championship home for Northern California." And he walks off, and there's this question mark on one of the, announcers. And we inbound the ball. I fade back, and I get it. And then there's the pictures of him, and he's sweating. He's, he's dribbling the ball. And the seconds count down, 7-5, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 second. Under those bright lights, Lou ran and jumped and shot. And then it just shows him in the motion of, shooting the ball. His hands are like this. And he says his whole world disappeared except for one ball and one basket. And then the clock shows 0. And there's this perfect, panel that he has on this one page is the ball is in flight and there's the basket. And then the next panel is like him sweating. And then it's like the ball, you can see it coming, and then it hits the rim, and then it goes thunk against the backboard. And then it goes swish. And then it says Manual Art Toilers and Bishop O'Dowd Dragons. And he's like, it's just wonderful. And the crowd starts to roar. But I'll go back and I'll show this to you because they're just so well done. So here's him talking, in the present, and then he's going back to the memories, telling the announcers. And then here's the scene where he's got the ball and it's counting down. He's dribbling down the, that just very few seconds left. And then there's just 1 second left. And then he shoots, no seconds. And there's that scene where the ball is just like that. I love that so much. Sweating. And then it's like, oh God, he didn't make it. And it comes back around. And then swish. And they win, or they thought they won. But they say that another player did, offensive goaltending and no bucket. And so it was a bad call. Even the announcers thought that. So I feel for Lou. That doesn't seem right. So that piece I like a lot. And then I wanted to show, this is the story about Sarah Berenson, who was born, Senda Berenson, who was born Senda Velverjinsky in Russia. And she was the woman who was responsible for starting women's basketball, girls basketball. And so you can see that in this, there's the yellow tones and the grays of the sepia. And I really love this, that he really emphasizes, how people didn't want the girls to play basketball because they thought it was too physical. And so these are the scenes from that section of the book about how the women's basketball got started. And I really like that. And then there's a little bit of history about, basketball and Catholic schools. When all the immigrants came, the Catholics started their own schools because they just, they were still speaking their own languages. And then how basketball, because it was not expensive, it didn't require a lot of expense with just a ball and, the baskets, that became a huge thing, a part of the Catholic school history. And I love that little bit of background on Catholic schools and basketball, because growing up in a family of 12, it's just, I didn't know if that was just a natural thing that people that were Catholic just love basketball, but it's really a part of the history and culture of the immigrant into coming in and performing, or forming their own small, school systems. And so I really love that. One of my favorite scenes is with a player, and his name is, oh shoot, let me see. I gotta find it. Javeen Sandhu, who is a Punjabi student. And so he gives this whole information about what it means to be a Sikh, and the Sikhs, in Sikhism. And then they have, and he's got the step with him. And talks about how Sikhism is the 9th largest religion in the world, and it was founded in India. And there's this great picture. It says Sikhism is the 9th largest religion in the world. It was founded in India in the 15th century by a man known as Guru Nanak. Among its main tenets are: there is but one God, true is his name, creative his personality, and immortal his form. A belief in one God, he who regards all humans as equals, as is truly religious, and a belief in the equality of all humankind. And I love this. He's got this the guru there, and then the 5 Ks of Sikhism. But the piece that I want to read, oops, sorry about the wobbly camera, was when Javine was in a class, and one of the teachers was talking about Gandhi. And so here it is. And every now and then, though, Javine is reminded that he is an outsider. O'Dowd's religion department deeply admires Mahatma Gandhi, the leader of the Indian independence movement in Britain's East Indian Empire. Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence is similar to Christ. Every semester, the Peace and Justice class does a unit on Gandhi. And Javine says, everybody knows him for his nonviolence stuff, but he's the one who wanted the partition of India, driven by Winston Churchill and his planners. Biggest forced migration of all time. All in all, I think between 250,000 and 500,000 Sikhs were murdered. He sent 2 million Indians to fight in World War I because he thought it would make us look more favorable to the British. Over 750,000 deaths. He refused to acknowledge Sikhism as its own religion and instead pushed it under Hinduism, which it is not. I can't speak for all Sikhs, but I hate Gandhi a lot. And so then it goes on, the coach says something to him to say, like, hey, what's up with that? And so he met again with his teacher. And then later it says, the teacher invites him to make a presentation to the class. I ask him about it when we next meet. And he says, how'd it go? The class was happy. They said it was good to have another perspective. And then it says another perspective, an outsider's perspective. And this is from Gene's point of view. As the season goes on, I notice something that occurs again and again. And so here's the pieces about when he's teaching about Gandhi, the teacher is, and here's Jeevan getting upset and him just saying how he hated Gandhi. And then he talks to the coach because obviously the teacher comes and talks to him about it, the religion teacher. So it's really well done. And back to the point about, I always talk a little bit about whether or not you would teach this. I would teach it to high school, totally. I would be a little skeptical about teaching it to middle schoolers as a class, but I would, definitely recommend it to middle school kids. There's some profanity. The F word is in there a couple of times, but they always, he doesn't say it outright. He just puts F asterisk, 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 which is good. But it's not like, if I would say, yeah, you could recommend it or put it on yourself for your middle school folks. But I definitely think it's definitely one that you can teach in high school. High school, I just think about if I could have had this a text with high school boys, they would have eaten it up because I always was struggling to get them something that they would enjoy. Next week, I'm going to review Before the Coffee Gets Cold. It's by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I think I practice every time I listen to a YouTube video to get the pronunciation right, but I'm not sure I always get it right. And then the following week, I went to my local library, and these are both from the library, and I'm here to promote your local library. I was so excited. I got 2 library cards this week, and I went to my local library, and they had a DVD of Perks of Being a Wallflower, but not the book. But a couple days later, I got a notice that I got the book, and this is a brand new book from my library, my local library. And I'm super excited that they bought a new one because they were going to do interlibrary loan, but they didn't. They got the new one. So next week, it'll be Before the Coffee Gets Cold, and the following week, Perks of Being a Wallflower. I can't wait to reread this. It's been a while, but I love this book. So I can't wait to read it. And that's by Stephen Chbosky. I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks for joining me today. Thank you. Bye.